Hello and welcome back to another video on the Football Zone. And today, now the season is all over in the Premier League, we're going to take a look back at every team's Premier League season. Just looking back, what were the positive bits, what were the negative bits, and where they look for next season. I'm going to do that for all 20 Premier League teams. After a brilliant Premier League season, so let's get straight into it. And we're going to start off in alphabetical order with Arsenal. Mikel Arteta's second full season in charge proved to be something of a roller coaster. It's easy to forget the Spaniard endurance intense scrutiny over his position at the start of the season after a miserable run of 3 defeats in their opening trios of fixtures. However, his young side battled back over the next 8 months to secure their highest Premier League finish for a team who lost each of their first 3 games of the season. The big disappointment was it looked like it could have been so much more, having looked near certainty to secure Champions League football before successive defeats to Tottenham and Newcastle saw them surrender their position. Well, there's no doubt the Gunners' collapse will have left a bad taste in many mouths, given some breathing space. Most will look at this year's achievements as a step in the right direction. Over the course of his tenure, Arteta has engineered exits for some of the club's highest earners, including former captain Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang in January, while hoping blood youngsters from Arsenal's favoured youth academy. The result means that Arsenal fielded the Premier League's youngest average starting XI for more than a year at 23 years and 308 days, while freeing finances to continue Arteta's rebuild. Consequently, despite Arsenal's failure to secure UCL football, significant investment is expected once again this summer, but big money signings will certainly raise expectations. Most fans are on board with Arteta's revolution in North London, which this season continually unburdened by the rigours of Europa League football. However, with the dreaded Thursday night fixtures gymnastics returning to Emirates next season, patience may well be required, because it could be a tough season next year. But yeah, there's little doubt that Arteta can continue to rebuild at the Emirates. Moving on then to Aston Villa, this felt like the season they consolidated themselves, having truly returned to the top flight for good, or at least their fans hope. Dean Smith became one of the season's early managerial casualties when he was sacked in November, making way for Steven Gerrard. The Liverpool legend made an instant impact, becoming the only second manager in Villa's history to win his first 2 Premier League games. Since then, the 41-year-old has gradually began to imprint his philosophy, attempting to fortify his leaking defence while demanding more quality on the ball from his side. This sensational January acquisition of Coutinho, which has since been made permanent, providing an uptick in form, and Gerrard's former Liverpool teammate made a straight impact. Coutinho, whose goal at the Etihad briefly looked like it may have proven costly in Man City's title race, has shown his real class in the Villa side. But the emergence of Jacob Ramsey is arguably Villa's big story. The sky looks the limit for him, who scored 6 league goals and made 33 appearances. Matty Cash is another player who's really acquitted himself. A big summer of recruitment has been promised ahead for Gerrard, but with the signing of Coutinho already, they look like they're moving in the top direction. Moving on then to Brentford's remarkable Premier League debut feels like it's been overshadowed by spectacular season in general, but Thomas Frank's achievement deserves serious recognition. The Dane, who's been nominated alongside the likes of Klopp and Guardiola for manager of the season, made a mockery of pre-season expectations, keeping the Bees well clear of the relegation zone. They've had many highlights as well. The 4-1 demolition job of Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, the 2-0 win on the opening day against Arsenal. Only 2 sides have ever won more games in their first ever Premier League season. A remarkable feat given the gulf between the Championship and the Premier League these days. Top scorer Ivan Toney carried over his Championship form, but it was the arrival of Christian Eriksen in January that's had a transformative effect, and he'll hope that Eriksen stays next season. If Brentford manage to keep hold of both Eriksen and Toney, they certainly are moving in a positive condition next season, and even without it, you'd probably say with that they are, because Brentford, they're just such a well-run club, and they're looking in a really good position at the moment. Moving on then to Brighton, European football once briefly looked on the cards for Graham Potter's Brighton, an unimaginable prospect not too long ago. Potter's stock has continued to rise with the transformation of the South Coast side into one of the most watchable sides in the league. They scored 51 points this season, their highest ever tally. Some of the outside may feel as though it could have been so much more for Brighton, but their long-standing problems in the final third reared their ugly head again. Morpay and Trossard finished their top scorers with 8 goals apiece. Only Wolves, Burnley, Watford and Norwich scored fewer goals. Potter will be desperate to add to his side this summer. His side registers next year 54.3, but only scored 42 goals. Despite those frustrations, it's no doubt been another successful season at the Amex, with the likes of Cucurella and Webster emerging. There will be teams after him probably. Will Potter be able to convince his young stars to stay, and will he be able to continue Brighton's solid recruitment? I think that will be the key determining factor really in how successful Brighton will be next year. But they've got all the footnotes of a team that will do very well next season, because like Brentford, they're just a very well-run club. Moving on into Burnley. Burnley's eventual relegation relegation from the Premier League always felt like it would be inevitable at some point. Fortunes always felt against the club this season from the COVID impacted fixture crisis that saw Burnley having to catch up on their relegation rivals to the departure of Chris Wood. There was also a hint of desperation when Sean Dyche was dismissed shortly before the end of the season, a significant gamble that didn't pay off. But it almost paid off though, as interim boss Mike Jackson and club captain Burnley helped pick up some big results against the likes of Southampton, Wolves and Watford. However, ultimately a 3-game winning streak before the final day helped seal their fate. Burnley had always looked short of quality over the course of their 6 years stay in the Premier League, but reliant on organisation, determination and spirit, they have managed to stave off as long as possible. Now faced with a bleak future with likes of loans issues they've got and stuff like that, it will be interesting to see how they do next year, and of course they'll be at risk of losing key players like Nick Pope, Maxwell Corner and players like that. So yeah, it probably will be tough for Burnley to bounce straight back up next season. Moving on then to Chelsea, coming into the Premier League, reigning European champions, they were seemingly a big threat to Man City and Liverpool. The signing of Lukaku was believed to be the missing puzzle to help push Chelsea over the line, and it looked that way it would play out when the Belgium hit the ground running in his first few weeks back at his boyhood club. But the trouble began brewing in December after a public dispute with Tuchel over Chelsea's changing style of play, with Lukaku suggesting he would even be open to immediate return to Syria. In truth, the Blue Season never really recovered from that self-inflicted turmoil. City and Liverpool disappeared into the horizon once more, leaving Chelsea defending their third place and third best team in the land for most of the year. Amid in the context of the unprecedented cases of the ownership in the background, perhaps it's cool to judge Chelsea's achievements on the field in the second half of the season too harshly. However, football is a ruthless business, and if the form sort of pick up the 4 wins from the final 10 games, Chelsea may struggle next season, especially with the likes of Antonio Rudiger leaving the club on a free transfer. So yeah, it's a bit of a tough season for Chelsea after such a promising start. Next up, Crystal Palace. There was genuine concerns about Palace's future at the end of last season, which seemed bizarre to counterbalance after the campaign Palace fans must have enjoyed. An exodus of experienced players last summer, along with the arrival of Premier League managerial novice Patrick Vieira, may have provided the recipe for trouble, but instead the Eagles cooked up a sensational season lit up by some of the finest young talents in the country. Vieira's nomination for manager of the season showed the hard work gone on in South London, although it'd be tough to ignore transferring his side from relegation battles to a tricky mid-table outfit, enjoying an FA Cup semi-final along the way. The French coach has improved Palace across almost every magical statistic, and they were beaten only 12 times this season, their lowest ever tally. Wilfried Zaha has scored 14 goals this season, and French youngster Michael Olise has enjoyed a fine debut campaign. And yeah, with these players being so young, like Mark Gurley as well, they're only going to improve as their time goes on. So yeah, the future definitely looks bright for Crystal Palace, and they'll be confident going into next season. Moving on then to Everton, when Rafa Benitez's experiment finally made its end, many believed it would be an improvement for Everton, but it didn't really turn out that way. As they would go on to one of their biggest scares in their Premier League era yet. It's hard to pinpoint exactly one thing that went wrong for Everton over the course of a truly miserable season. But yeah, it all kind of stemmed with the appointment of Benitez, which, you know, was always going to go terribly wrong with his history. It was hoped Frank Lampard would turn it around, but to be honest, it really didn't work. Alex Iwobi's 99th minute winner for 10 million toffees against Newcastle at Goodison Park in March eventually helped turn the tides, and the euphoria of beating Palace will live long in the memory. But you know, 16th place finish really isn't good for a club like Everton, and they need a major overhaul in the summer to ensure they're not in this position again in 12 months, and they can start building to where they should be, and that is without a shadow of a doubt in the top half of the Premier League. Is Frank Lampard the right man to do it? Who knows? But you know, at the end of the day, he kept them up. So yeah, Everton fans need to give him a bit of time. Next up is Leeds. Leeds' blistering returns to the Premier League last season saw them become the neutral's favourite side thanks to their brilliant style under Marcelo Bielsa. But how quickly things change. The Argentine is now unemployed, and Leeds only secured their status on the final day of the season. It was abandoned in February with the Whites in free fall, crushing defeat to become the norm. Given a hero's farewell, Bielsa knew his time was up, and Jesse Marsh was quickly appointed as successor. The American coach hardly engineered a revolution in Yorkshire, and indeed, Stumfield, the jury is still out. But Marsh played a part in kind of making a bit of a brilliant team spirit there. Keyman Rafinha showed he belongs at the very top level. Calvin Phillips had a decent season. But yeah, with those two potentially off at the end of the season, could it be another season of struggle for Leeds? Brentford obviously missed a huge part of the season after how good he was last season. That was a major blow. But yeah, the jury's still out on Jesse Marsch, and it'll be interesting to see how he does next season when he's given the summer to build. Moving on then to Leicester. Perhaps it's a measure of how expected Leicester are these days to be fighting at the top, that many will class as a disappointing season. But in steering inside to another top 8 finish and another European semi-final, Brendan Rodgers will be proud of the work at King Power Stadium over the last few months. A fantastic last season rally led to a rejuvenated James Maddison, put a shine on the campaign which threatened to extinguish in disappointment. Maddison scored in each of the Foxes' last few all games of the Premier League season, as well as laying on 3 assists to prove that he could be called up for the World Cup. Injuries played their part in containing Leicester's progress once again, with the likes of injuries to Fofana, Evans, Vardy and Ndidi. The subsequent chopping and changing led to lots of goals being conceded, but Leicester, if they get a fairly fit squad next season, could be back to cooking. No European football. So yeah, maybe they can have an Arsenal type season, be back in the mix for the Champions League next season. Because yeah, they're still a brilliantly run club. And all of that sort of thing. Moving on then to Liverpool. For the third time in 4 years, Liverpool ranked in more than 90 points, but Man City's continued dominance ensured they must take another runner-up spot. Klopp feels his side could have done more over the course of an exhausting year that saw Liverpool play the maximum number of possible games thanks to their success. In almost any other era, they would have won multiple titles, more than just one. Top scorer Mohamed Salah won his third Golden Boot, while no keeper kept more clean sheets than Alisson. Trent continues to redefine the fullback position in tandem with fellow assist machine Andy Robertson, and Virgil van Dijk still has that claim to be the world's best centre-back. It's difficult not to criticise Liverpool. Diaz's impact since joining had a huge impact, and Konate at centre-back as well came in to be a great signing. But yeah, taking home 2 major trophies, they'll be very happy with that. But the disappointment of, losing 2 trophies in the last week of the season, I think will stay with them for a long time. But on the whole, it's still been a great season, and yeah, you wouldn't be betting against them not being right up there again next season, competing for the Champions League, the Premier League, FA Cup and Carabao Cup, and because we've seen how good they are this season. Moving on then to Man City, mission accomplished for Pep Guardiola's side as his side delivered a 4th Premier League trophy in 5 years. They tend not to do it the easy way, being 2-0 down to Steven Gerrard's Villa. Thankfully, 3 goals in 5 minutes saw them win the title. Despite the slender 1-point gap to Liverpool in second place, it's tough to argue City don't deserve their continued success. Guardiola has built one of the most impressive dominant sides in Premier League history. In total, City spent 168 days at the top of the Premier League this campaign, scoring a league-high 99 goals, conceding the joint fewest, along with Liverpool at 26. The imminent addition of goal-scoring sensation Erling Haaland will strike fear into Premier League rivals, with City once again likely to enter the title favourites. For City, it really was one of those seasons where they could have easily ended up trophyless, and what a shocker that would have been. But eventually they came through, they pulled through. Got that trophy, and with Haaland coming in next season, you would bet against them like Liverpool competing for all 4 titles, especially the Champions League, because that's the one that they really desperately want. And yeah, despite winning the league, there probably is still some disappointment that they couldn't beat Real Madrid from that collapse. But moving on then to Manchester United, and where to start, a shocking season. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's departure at the end of November was supposed to be the catalyst for a fresh start, but instead it proved to be the death knell, with United slowly disintegrating into complete dysfunction. Ralph Rangnick's temporary tenure appears to have only worsened the issues that were evident during Solskjaer's team. This resulting mass means that United finished the season with the lowest ever Premier League points tally, 58, while failing to finish the top flight season with a positive goal difference for the first time since 1990. The season began with Cristiano Ronaldo's triumphant homecoming and ended with a team in crisis, reports of disharmony, player revolt and toxic relationship. New incoming manager Erik ten Hag's arrival looks to be one of the only bright spots on the horizon, but boy oh boy, he has a big job to rebuild that club. There could be a long overdue departure at the club, with the likes of Paul Pogba, Jesse Lingard and Edison Cavani likely to be the first as many departs on free transfers. But yeah, it's not going to be done imminently, that Manchester United rebuild. It's going to take several years, because yeah, it just sums up the state they're in at the moment. It's definitely not a quick fix to get up to the brilliant levels that we've seen from Manchester City and Liverpool over the last few years. Moving on into Newcastle, it's a tale of 2 halves sometimes hard this year, as Newcastle United transformed into one of the form teams in the league after a historically poor start to their campaign, eventually securing their Premier League status. The match behind Mike Ashley was finally released with his control of the club in October, when the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund PIF was given sudden approval by the Premier League. It saw Newcastle at the time winless and mild in relegation trouble, instantly become the richest club in world football, at least on paper, and sparked a frantic push to preserve the team's Premier League status. Steve Bruce was given the sack, and it looked like Emery would come in, but instead it was Eddie Howe. After a significant transfer kitty, and the first time in recent memory, the team also recruited smartly during January to bolster their chances of staying up, and the results have been nothing short of remarkable, with only City, Liverpool and Tottenham picking up more points than Newcastle in the second half of the season, and including injuries to key men like Callum Wilson and Kieran Trippier. They're going to have a brilliant season next year, and with all that money they have over the summer, it'll be intriguing to see what they can do, and it's looking like it could be a really, really good season for Newcastle next year, and I can't wait to see what they can do. Moving on then to Norwich. Norwich finished the season with a goal difference of 61 minus, the lowest since Derby in that famous season. It is a statistic illustrated the team's season perfectly. It is that if Norwich have been miserable for almost the entire campaign, showing they've learned little from their most recent sojourns into the top flight, it will things may be different this time when Daniel Farke handed a decent transfer kitty to recruit 11 players, but Farke's failures in the first months of the season eventually cost him his job, and he was swiftly replaced by the ex-Villa boss Dean Smith. Smith, though, was unable to turn around the Canaries' own fortunes as they limped towards the end of the season, finishing 16 points adrift to safety. Team Puki list provided something for Norwich fans to cheer about, scoring 11 times for the second time in the Premier League, and not a bad return in the Premier League. But for Norwich, it is an interesting one. Will they be able to go straight back up next season? It's a tough one to call because, how long can they just keep on being a yo-yo club and finishing so far behind in the Premier League? But it will be interesting to see how they fare in the Championship next season. It's a hard one to call too, no. But moving on then to Southampton. From the outside, it's hard to pinpoint exactly where Southampton are making progress under Hasenhüttl. In 4 seasons under the Austrians, they finished 16th, 11th, 15th and 15th again after a 4-1 mauling to Leicester on the last day. The South Coast side do not have limited resources to compete with those above them in the table, but there does appear to be thematic surrender during a large stretch of the season. Earlier this year, they were merely 5 places off the European places, but ended 16 points adrift to West Ham in 7th. Despite all the frustrations, there have been plenty to be cheerful about. Ward-Prowse's fine form and central midfielder has given him a good chance of being called up to the World Cup. Cole Walker-Peters and Tino Livramento have also enjoyed breakout seasons, but where does Southampton go from this? Is it going to be mid-table every season? Perhaps those are questions Hasenhüttl is asking himself about. Rumours about his future in football may not be completely certain anymore. But for Southampton it is an interesting one. What will they do next season? Will they be in a similar position next season? Will they make forward, or could they even be stuck into a relegation zone? Moving on then to Tottenham. Tottenham performed Antonio Conte described as a miracle in securing Champions League football, emerging from the unlikeliest positions to deny Arsenal. Superheaded by the explosive return to form of Harry Kane and still underrated Heung-min Son. Spurs' points tally in the second half season was based only by City and Liverpool. Son's brace on the final 5-0 trouncing of Norwich on the last day saw him win the Golden Boot for the first time, sharing the honour with Mo Salah. But while the free-scoring trio of Kane, Son and Kolosevsky, who transferred in the season, Spurs' defence improved considerably too. Anchored by Romero and Dyer, the backline helped 5 clean sheets in their final 8 games to maintain their charge at the table. De Levy is set for talks with Conte about his future, and Conte is believed to want several new recruits, and that's exactly what he should be given, really, because we've seen with Conte in charge that if he's in charge, Tottenham really can be transformed, and that's exactly what they need next season. And with him in charge, you definitely wouldn't be betting against them coming in the Champions League positions again next season. Moving on then to Watford. Just the 3 managers took charge of Watford on the latest brief visits to the top flight, with the retiring Roy Hodgson, the last man out the door. The Spaniards season began with Spaniards Xisco Munoz in the dugout, having helped to steer the Hornets back to the Premier League, but loyalty is short. Pozzo sacked him and was shot for Claudio Ranieri in October. Leicester's title-winning coach never looked the right fit for Watford, though, and by late January he was given his marching orders after a disastrous reign. Roy Hodgson then readied himself for one last battle in the Premier League, but he may have wished he hadn't bothered, really. No matter who the manager was, they shipped goals left, right and centre. The talented Sarr, Dennis, Hernandez gave Watford some rich forward lines, but in the end it just wasn't enough. Former Forest Green Rovers boss Rob Edwards has been appointed as the outgoing Hodgson's successor, and they'll be hopeful he can secure a return to the top flight. But it is a risky appointment, and hopefully Watford give him time, because that's what a new upcoming manager like Rob Edwards needs. But yeah, it will be interesting to see how Watford do back down in the second tier. Moving on then to West Ham, some may consider David Moyes unlucky not to find himself among the nominees for manager of the season. No generally in troublemakers to the top six. The Hammers narrowly missed out on leapfrogging United in the Europa League following a 4-3-1 defeat on the last day of the season to Brighton, but that should not colour what's been an otherwise fantastic season for West Ham, who reached the European semi-final for the first time in 46 years. The form of Declan Rice continues to impress, and he'll have suitors from the likes of Chelsea and Man United. Moyes will be desperate to keep that man after Martinell's retirement, particularly giving them some strength in the midfield. Jarrod Bowen as well, who's emerged as a brilliant player, scoring 12 Premier League goals and now in the England squad, as well as Mikel Antonio, who's had another brilliant season for them and continues to lead the line exceptionally. West Ham could be moving in the right frame of mind forward next season. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be another exciting season under David Moyes. And will West Ham be able to continue in and around the European positions based off the form they've shown this season? It definitely does look like it. Moving on then to Wolves. It always looked likely to be a season of transition for Wolves after Nuno's departure. At the time, Wolves looked as though they were ready to compete with the top six, yet finished the season looking like relegation battlers. The lack of goal scoring threat this season has been stark. In fact, Wolves have become the only the third team to finish in the top half of the season while scoring as few as 38 goals. Jimenez topped the scoring with just 6. Neto's lengthy spell of injury impacted Wolves in the final third, and the Portuguese winger looks like the new star in the making for the Midlands club. However, Wolves' rearguard action helped them steer clear of any trouble, with keeper Jose Sarr outperforming his expected goals tally by 7.6. David De Gea was the next best with 2.9, so that just shows how well he's been. And then you've got defenders Max Kilman and Conor Cody have also done well, ensuring they've been solid at the back. But largely the figures has definitely got to be on going forward and creating more goals, because that's what they really need to move them forward next season. Because yeah, based off this season, all the stats, it certainly does look like they've got the defence sorted. But anyway, guys, that's the video. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to like, share, subscribe, remember to comments down for influencers, and subscribe for daily football news, and subscribe to my channel, and that would be greatly appreciated. Thanks very much for watching. Peace.